They say you are what you eat, but what they don't say is that what you eat can also shape who you become spiritually. In a world full of distractions, temptations, and spiritual warfare, it's easy to think that food is just a physical matter, something that affects your weight, energy, or health. But that's only part of the story. The truth is, Satan doesn't need to wage war through chaos alone. He can do it subtly, one bite at a time. And the most dangerous attacks are the ones you never even notice happening. That's why the war for your soul often starts in a place most people overlook: your gut. Food has always had a powerful connection to the spiritual realm. Think about it. When God created man, He placed him in a garden. The very first commandment wasn't about war or worship. It was about eating. Do not eat from this tree. From the beginning, Satan understood that if he could control what you consume, he could influence your destiny. That wasn't just about a piece of fruit. It was about trust, obedience, discipline, and spiritual clarity. When you consume food that's been spiritually and chemically corrupted, you unknowingly submit to a different kind of influence, one that clouds your thoughts, weakens your intuition, and dulls your connection to God. Let's be honest, how many times have you eaten something and felt mentally foggy afterward? Sluggish, spiritually heavy. That's not a coincidence. Many of today's most popular foods are engineered to hijack your brain, drain your energy, and make you dependent on more stimulation just to get through the day. These are not just physical consequences, they are spiritual blockages. Satan doesn't need to possess you with demons when he can possess your appetite. And once your appetite is out of control, your mind follows, your emotions follow, and before you know it, your spirit is buried under layers of cravings, fatigue, and guilt. This isn't about being overly religious about every bite you take. It's about becoming aware. When you eat with intention, your body becomes a clear vessel for divine guidance. When you eat with ignorance or indulgence, you open yourself up to confusion and control. The foods that flood the shelves today, loaded with artificial preservatives, synthetic sugars, fake flavors, are not just bad for your body. They are designed to disconnect you from your purpose, because once Satan can blur your vision, he can bend your path. And when your energy is low, your discernment becomes weaker, making it harder to distinguish between God's voice and the enemy's lies. You see, Satan doesn't need to attack you in broad daylight if he can silently dull your spirit from within. And food is one of the easiest ways to do that. If he can keep you eating out of habit, boredom, or emotional instability, then he doesn't have to work as hard to pull you off course. He knows that a person who's constantly in a cycle of fatigue, brain fog, and spiritual confusion won't have the clarity or energy to pray deeply, meditate with purpose, or live with bold conviction. So ask yourself, what's truly fueling your life? Is it processed comfort or divine clarity? Are you feeding your flesh at the expense of your soul? Because the moment you reclaim your plate is the moment you begin to reclaim your power. And that's where freedom begins, at the point where you no longer let your cravings dictate your choices, and instead let your higher self take the lead. That's how you break the first chain, by realizing the battle begins with what you allow on your fork. If there's one substance that looks innocent but is more dangerous than people realize, it's sugar. Sweet, addictive, and everywhere, sugar is Satan's favorite trap, dressed in a pretty disguise. Most people don't even question it. It's in your breakfast, your snacks, your drinks, your so-called healthy foods. It's normalized, celebrated, even used as a reward. But what if I told you that the very thing giving you comfort is also giving the enemy control? Sugar isn't just bad for your teeth or your waistline. It's a weapon against your willpower. Every time you consume it, your brain releases dopamine, the same chemical that floods your system with pleasure when you gamble, when you drink, or when you engage in other addictive behaviors. Satan knows this. He knows that if he can keep you coming back for that next sugar rush, he can weaken your resistance, dull your clarity, and ultimately disconnect you from your divine identity. Sugar creates dependency, and where there is dependency, there is vulnerability. Think about it. How do you feel after you've indulged in sugar, heavy foods? Sure, there's a temporary high, a quick burst of energy, maybe even a sense of comfort, but it never lasts. After the high comes the crash. You feel tired, sluggish, irritable, and foggy. And in that low place, you're more likely to make impulsive decisions, to react emotionally, to feel spiritually distant. That's not a coincidence. Sugar is a cycle, and Satan loves cycles, especially the ones that keep you trapped, distracted, and disconnected from your purpose. Some people think it's just food. What harm can it really do? But sugar, especially in the quantities we consume today, is a tool of spiritual sabotage. It hijacks your natural balance, it floods your bloodstream, inflames your body, triggers mood swings, and messes with your sleep. When your body is inflamed, your spirit is weighed down. You can't operate at your highest frequency when your internal system is in chaos. And that chaos starts with the foods you thought were harmless. There's a reason ancient spiritual practices, from fasting to clean eating, encouraged simplicity and restraint. It wasn't just about discipline for the sake of rules. It was about keeping your vessel clean so you could hear God clearly and stay aligned with truth. Sugar fogs that clarity. It makes you reactive instead of reflective. It keeps you chasing comfort instead of walking in purpose. And once you've surrendered your clarity, Satan doesn't even need to tempt you. You'll start choosing his path on your own without even realizing it. Now imagine this happening on a societal level. Billions of people waking up every day, hooked on sugar-laced products, living in brain fog, low energy, and emotional instability. They're distracted, impatient, spiritually numb, and that's exactly how Satan wants them, because people who are spiritually numb are easier to control. They don't resist, they don't question, they consume, they conform, all for the next hit of sweetness, the next sip of soda, the next bite of cake. This isn't about fear, it's about freedom. Once you see sugar for what it truly is, you realize it's not just a craving, it's a cage. And you don't have to live inside it. You were never meant to be controlled by your appetite. You were meant to walk in power, with a mind that's clear, a body that's energized, and a spirit that's fully awake. But to get there, you have to stop feeding the enemy your attention, your energy, and your will. The sweetest thing you can do for your soul is to say no to the sugar that's trying to keep you from becoming who you were born to be. We live in a world that glorifies convenience. Everything is fast service, fast scrolling, fast replies, fast food. And while the promise of convenience sounds harmless, even helpful, not everything fast is good for the soul. Fast food, in particular, is one of Satan's most subtle and destructive tools. It looks like a harmless solution to a busy life, but underneath that shiny packaging is a trap designed to weaken you mentally, physically, and spiritually. It doesn't just clog your arteries, it clogs your clarity, your energy, and your divine direction. Let's be real. When you're tired, stressed, or emotionally drained, fast food feels like an easy way out. It's comforting, predictable, and everywhere. But have you ever stopped to think about what you're really consuming? It's not just food. It's chemicals, artificial flavors, fake colors, and genetically altered ingredients. These things are not only unnatural, they are spiritually numbing. Fast food is engineered to satisfy your hunger quickly, but it comes at a cost. It keeps you from engaging with the process of nourishment. It teaches your mind to crave shortcuts. And the more shortcuts you take in the physical, the more shortcuts you start to take in the spiritual. What you eat doesn't just affect your body, it sets the tone for your decisions, your focus, your habits. And when your body is filled with toxins and synthetic ingredients, your spirit can't operate freely. You might pray and wonder why you don't feel connected. You might try to focus and wonder why your thoughts are scattered. You might try to pursue your purpose, but feel weighed down by confusion, laziness, or fear. That weight isn't just emotional or mental. It's physical, and a lot of it comes from what you're feeding yourself. The enemy understands this better than most people do. Satan doesn't need to appear in a puff of smoke to tempt you into ruin. He can do it with a combo meal and a soda. He can do it with convenience that keeps you from discipline. Because every time you choose what's easy over what's intentional, you're reinforcing a mindset that says, I don't need to be present. I don't need to be thoughtful. I just need to be full. And fullness without awareness is one of the most dangerous states you can live in. That's exactly where Satan wants you, full of the wrong things, so there's no room for the right things. He wants you full of sugar, grease, and salt, so you're too tired to pursue your dreams. He wants you addicted to the quick fix, so you never learn to value the process. Fast food makes you dependent. It creates cravings that are hard to break. It wires your brain to seek dopamine from fried things rather than from divine moments, meaningful connections, or personal growth. That's not nourishment. That's manipulation. You see, when your body becomes a place of constant chemical warfare, your spirit suffers. You become reactive instead of responsive. You get easily irritated, easily discouraged, easily distracted. You begin to accept spiritual fog as your new normal, but that fog lifts the moment you start making conscious choices. The moment you reject fast food is the moment you start rejecting the fast-paced, spiritually disconnected lifestyle that Satan wants you trapped in. This isn't just about food, it's about freedom. When you reclaim your power over what you eat, you start to reclaim your time, your attention, and your spirit. Because no matter how fast the world spins, you don't have to let it spin you out of alignment. You can choose slowness. You can choose presence. You can choose the food that fuels your purpose, not the one that feeds your prison. And once you stop letting the enemy feed you, you'll finally remember what it feels like to be truly alive. There's a reason Satan doesn't need to show up in obvious, dramatic ways anymore. He doesn't have to possess people or speak from shadows. He just needs to alter what we consume. Because the moment something pure is tampered with, its original purpose becomes corrupted, and nowhere is that more true than in the food we eat. In today's world, we're not just eating natural foods grown from the earth, we're consuming genetically modified organisms, lab-grown flavors, chemically altered crops, and hormone-injected meat. These are the modern-day forbidden fruits, repackaged as convenience and innovation. But underneath it all, they carry the same consequence: separation from truth, disconnection from self, and alignment with deception. God created food to nourish, to heal, and to connect us with the rhythm of nature. Every fruit, every seed, every grain had a design, a divine blueprint. But Satan has always been a counterfeiter. He can't create, so he corrupts. He takes what was once sacred and twists it just enough to seem helpful, while stripping away its spiritual power. Genetically modified foods are more than just altered crops. They are symbols of rebellion. When man decides to improve upon God's design, he is essentially saying, "What you made isn't enough." And that's exactly the lie Satan wants you to believe. When you consume food that has been genetically or chemically altered, you're not just putting something foreign into your body, you're putting something spiritually misaligned into your system. Your body is intelligent, it was designed to work in harmony with nature, but when you feed it confusion, frankenfoods with no clear blueprint, your body struggles. Your mind fogs, your emotions shift. You may not feel it right away, but over time, the disconnect becomes noticeable. You stop feeling sharp, you stop feeling energized, you stop feeling grounded. That's not just a physical issue, it's spiritual interference. These altered foods do more than disrupt your digestion or mess with your hormones. They interfere with your spiritual tuning. You may find yourself less patient, more anxious, more distracted. You may notice a constant background hum of restlessness or fatigue, like something is always just a little off. That's what happens when your body, mind, and spirit aren't in sync, and Satan thrives in that disconnect. Because the more confused you feel inside, the easier it is for him to whisper lies into your life. You see, the enemy doesn't need to launch an attack when you're already disoriented from the inside out. He just needs to keep you feeding on confusion. And what's more confusing than food that looks real but isn't? Fruit that's shiny and flawless but has been stripped of its soul. Meat that's pumped full of hormones so it grows faster, bigger, and cheaper, but now carries the energy of fear, imbalance, and sickness. That's not just poor nutrition, that's spiritual sabotage. And what makes it more dangerous is that it's everywhere. It's not labeled evil, it's labeled natural flavors. It's marketed as affordable, efficient, and modern. It appeals to the mind that wants more for less, faster results, and fewer questions. But the soul knows the difference. Your spirit can feel when something is off. That inner nudge, that quiet discomfort. It's not paranoia. It's divine wisdom warning you, this isn't what it seems. Breaking free from these foods isn't about being extreme. It's about being awake. It's about honoring the body God gave you and recognizing that not everything placed on your plate was meant to nourish you. Some things were meant to dull you, to slow you down, to keep you stuck in cycles of imbalance, so you never rise into your true power. But once you begin to reject the fake and return to the real, the natural, the God designed, you begin to heal on levels far deeper than the physical. And that's when the chains start to fall, when you stop eating the lie and start living in truth. It's easy to think caffeine is harmless. After all, it's legal, it's common, and it's woven into the fabric of daily life. People start their mornings with coffee, chug energy drinks to stay alert, and sip tea to keep going through long nights. Society celebrates caffeine as a productivity booster, a social ritual, and even a comfort drink. But underneath that cultural acceptance is a dangerous truth. Most people ignore caffeine, especially when consumed excessively, is a counterfeit fuel. It mimics energy, but it doesn't create it. And when you rely on something fake to keep going, you slowly disconnect from the real source of your strength. There's a reason you feel jittery, anxious, and on edge after too much caffeine. There's a reason your body crashes hours later, leaving you even more tired than before. That cycle of artificial stimulation followed by emotional and physical depletion is no accident. It's not just your body reacting. It's your spirit responding to an invasion. Caffeine in high doses doesn't just hijack your nervous system. It disrupts your natural rhythm, your God-given internal clock, and your connection to the peace that comes from stillness. And Satan loves that, because stillness is where clarity lives. Stillness is where divine instructions are downloaded. Stillness is where power is born. But caffeine pushes you out of stillness and into a frantic, restless state, where it becomes harder to hear from God and easier to react from fear, stress, or ego. The truth is, Energy drinks and excessive caffeine give you a false fire. They create the illusion of power, but it's a temporary flame that burns you out faster than you think. And when you start depending on that false fire day after day, you begin to lose touch with your natural vitality, the kind that comes from rest, prayer, discipline, and alignment. You begin to believe that exhaustion is normal, that burnout is just part of success, and that pushing through pain is what strength looks like. But none of that is true. That's Satan's version of productivity, rushed, exhausted, overstimulated, and disconnected from the soul. God never intended for us to live in a constant state of exhaustion, needing a chemical jolt just to get out of bed or focus for an hour. The energy we're meant to operate from is sustained, grounded, and clear. It comes from living in alignment with truth, not by shocking our systems with caffeine every few hours. When we fuel ourselves with God's presence, with real food, with rest, with purpose, we unlock a different kind of energy, one that doesn't crash, one that doesn't come with a price, one that doesn't pull us further away from who we're called to be. But Satan knows most people won't wait for that kind of energy. Most people want instant results, instant clarity, instant motivation. So he offers a shortcut, and caffeine is that shortcut in a can or cup. Easy, fast, and deceptive. It seems like a small thing, but it adds up. It chips away at your patience, your focus, your sleep, your peace. And before you realize it, you're wired but not awake, tired but can't rest, active but not aligned. You're moving but not being moved by truth. It's not about never drinking coffee or tea again. It's about asking why you're depending on it. Is it a tool you use wisely or a crutch you can't function without? Because anything you can't function without has power over you. And if Satan can control your energy, he can influence your choices. He can keep you in cycles of burnout and distraction, so you never step into the fullness of your purpose. And that's exactly how the enemy wins, by replacing divine fire with artificial sparks that keep you busy, but never truly lit. There's something powerful that happens the moment you say no, not to others but to yourself, to your cravings, your impulses, your habits. That one word no becomes a weapon in spiritual warfare, and nowhere is that more true than in the act of fasting or practicing food discipline. You see, the greatest threat to Satan's control isn't a loud prayer or a flashy ritual. It's a quiet, firm decision to deny the flesh and honor the spirit. Because when you say no to what the body wants, you start hearing what the soul needs, and that kind of clarity terrifies the enemy. Fasting isn't about starving. It's about stripping away distractions so you can strengthen your spirit. It's a return to simplicity, a reset button for both the body and the soul. It's where clarity returns, instincts sharpen, and connection with God deepens. Most people think fasting is just about losing weight or proving discipline. But spiritually, it's so much more than that. It's a declaration that says, I am not ruled by my appetite. And that one truth, lived out consistently, breaks chains you didn't even know you were dragging. In today's world, where we're constantly fed literally and mentally, fasting is rebellion. It's going against a system that wants you overstimulated, and overwhelmed. Because when you're full all the time, when you're constantly indulging, you lose your hunger for deeper things. That's by design. Satan wants you numb. He wants you too busy eating to reflect, too distracted to pray, too sluggish to dream, and that's exactly why fasting is such a threat. It clears the fog and exposes the lies. When you practice food discipline, whether it's avoiding certain ingredients, cutting out the foods that dull your awareness, or choosing real, whole nourishment, you're saying, I choose to live with intention, and intention is powerful. It's the foundation of spiritual alignment. When you're intentional with your food, you become more intentional with your time, your thoughts, your words. You begin to notice what no longer serves your growth. You become harder to manipulate. You become a threat to everything the enemy built around your weakness. Food is a form of agreement. Every bite you take either fuels your spirit or feeds your distraction. Fasting breaks that agreement with chaos. It pauses the cycle long enough for you to hear your real self again, the part of you that isn't tired, addicted, or lost, but powerful, awake, and deeply connected to purpose. That's why, in ancient times, people fasted before battle, before vision quests, before spiritual encounters. They knew the body had to be quiet for the soul to speak clearly. Satan fears that version of you, the one that's sharp, focused, untethered from cravings, and full of spiritual fire. Because that version of you doesn't fall for his tricks. That version of you sees past the temptation. That version of you is dangerous to the darkness because you're no longer easily pulled. You've built an inner fortress. And it started not with a scream, not with a sword, but with a quiet no to the very thing that used to own you. This kind of self-mastery spills into every area of life. When you discipline yourself at the table, you carry that strength into your thoughts, your relationships, your habits, your dreams. You walk with a different kind of authority, not the kind the world gives, but the kind that comes from alignment with the divine. And when that happens, the enemy has no place left to hide. Because the moment you take control of what goes into your body, you begin taking back everything that was stolen from your spirit.